There comes a moment in every life when a person must decide whether they will continue to live by the laws of limitation or rise into the realm of dominion. The worker waits to be told what to do, but the leader commands life with the authority of thought. The worker looks at circumstances and reacts, but the leader understands that circumstances are only the shadow of an inner belief. What you think, you direct. What you believe, you create. A leader is not made by position, title, or applause. A leader is made by the consciousness they carry. A worker asks, "What must I do to survive?" But a leader asks, "What vision must I hold to thrive?" The world mirrors back to each of us the level of mind we stand upon. When one thinks like a worker, they are ruled by time, money, supervisors, and fear of loss. But when one thinks like a leader, they know that everything seen is but an effect, and true power lies in the unseen cause. Thought. A worker waits for opportunities, a leader generates them. A worker depends on wages, a leader depends on wisdom. A worker fears losing employment. A leader understands they can never lose what belongs to them by right of consciousness, and that something greater always appears when they walk in faith instead of fear. The leader knows that supply is never in the job, the client, or the paycheck. It is in the infinite, and flows through whatever channel is needed. The worker mindset says, "I must do more to earn more." The leader mindset says, "I must be more to receive more." The universe answers vibration, not exhaustion. It responds to the one who knows, not the one who struggles. The worker pleads. The leader expects. The worker tries to force results by labor. The leader magnetizes results by certainty. Every person has the right to rise from worker to leader, not by stepping on others, but by stepping into their true identity. You are not born to be ruled by fear, directives, or doubt. You were born to direct your own life through the power of definite thought backed by unwavering faith. The worker asks permission. The leader gives themselves permission. If you want to live as a leader, begin with thought. See yourself as already possessing the thing you desire. Speak as one who already owns the victory. Act as one who already has the authority. Refuse to bow to appearances. For appearances change the moment inner conviction changes. Life becomes obedient to the one who is obedient to their own vision. To think like a leader is to know that nothing is withheld from the mind that refuses to accept defeat. The world may call you unrealistic, ambitious, even impossible, but the world has always mocked the ones who live above the average mind. Every empire, every invention, every revolution was born from someone who dared to think as a leader while others were content to follow. There is no magic in labor alone, but there is great magic in thought infused with faith. The leader knows that effort without vision is toil, and vision without belief is fantasy. But belief with action is destiny. The question is not whether you can lead, because leadership is not given, it is claimed. The question is, will you continue to think like a worker waiting for life to change, or will you rise, think like a leader, and command life to align? A leader creates from vision, while a worker reacts from circumstance. This truth is the dividing line between those who rule their reality and those who are ruled by it. A worker looks at what is in front of them and adjusts themselves to fit the situation, believing that life is something to be responded to, endured, or adapted around. But a leader understands that life is not something that happens to them. It is something that is shaped through the power of inner vision. A worker waits for instructions, solutions, and direction, because they believe that authority is outside themselves. A leader gives direction, because they know that authority begins within. The difference is not in what they do, but in how they think. The worker mindset is built on reaction, the leader mindset on creation. A worker sees obstacles and adjusts plans. A leader sees obstacles and adjusts beliefs. The worker thinks, "How do I get through this?" While the leader thinks, "How do I rise above this?" One looks at the visible world as the deciding factor, the other sees the visible world as the result of previous thoughts. The worker places power in policies, bosses, markets, governments, customers, and time. The leader places power in imagination, conviction, divine order, and inner authority. The worker is moved by appearances. The leader understands appearances are clay, not concrete. The worker is constantly measuring what is possible by past experience. while the leader knows that possibility is not in the past, but in the unseen realm of thought, waiting to be called forth. A worker hopes, but a leader expects. Hope is passive and unsure. Expectation is creative and commanding. The worker asks, "What can I get?" The leader asks, "What can I create?" The worker looks for opportunity. The leader becomes the source of opportunity. The worker waits for the right time. The leader decides that now is the right time. A worker sees life through the eyes of limitation and accepts what is offered. A leader sees life through the eyes of abundance and calls forth what is needed. The worker depends on reality. The leader depends on vision. Knowing that vision becomes reality. A worker seeks security. A leader builds certainty. Security is always external: salary, structure, systems, routine. Certainty is internal: faith, clarity, purpose, and command. A worker fears losing what they have, believing supply can be withdrawn. A leader knows that supply is an outward expression of inner consciousness, and nothing can be taken away from the one who knows the source is infinite. The worker tries to hold on to the job. The leader develops the mindset that creates multiple channels of flow. The worker prays not to lose. The leader declares they will win, because winning is not dependent on a position or paycheck, but on the state of mind held with conviction. Workers react to problems. Leaders birth solutions. The worker sees something wrong and worries. The leader sees something wrong and envisions what will replace it. The worker talks about what is happening. The leader talks about what will happen when the vision is fulfilled. The worker's energy is drained by the present. The leader's energy is fueled by the future. One survives inside the system. The other changes the system or creates a new one. The worker is trained to think in terms of tasks, hours, and rewards that must be earned. The leader thinks in terms of ideas, value, and outcomes that must be claimed. The worker trades time for money. The leader trades thought for manifestation. The worker believes in effort as the highest currency. The leader believes in alignment as the highest currency. The worker is taught to climb the ladder. The leader understands they can build the building and own the ladder. The worker serves the structure. The leader shapes the structure. The reason the worker mindset feels safe is because it is built on predictability. The schedule is set, the rules are known, the expectations are outlined. The leader mindset often feels uncertain because it is built on faith in the unseen. But the unseen is where all creation begins. Every invention, empire, company, movement, an idea that ever transformed the world existed first in the invisible mental world of a leader before it ever took form. Workers operate inside what already exists. Leaders think in terms of what does not yet exist, but must exist. They hold the picture, speak the picture, walk in the picture until the world conforms to it. A worker uses their mind to remember. A leader uses their mind to imagine. A worker asks, "What is allowed?" A leader asks, "What is possible?" A worker waits for permission. A leader gives themselves authority. A worker wants to be chosen. A leader decides they are chosen. The worker mindset is bound by conditions. The leader mindset creates conditions. The worker says, "This is how things are." The leader says, "This is how things will be." The worker thinks in straight lines. Cause and effect tied to effort and time. The leader thinks in quantum leaps. Cause and effect tied to belief and alignment. The worker thinks they must earn everything step by step. The leader knows that belief collapses time and brings outcomes in ways that defy logic. The worker thinks life is happening to them. The leader thinks life is happening through them. The worker fits into reality. The leader bends reality. The worker lives inside what is reasonable. The leader lives inside what is inevitable, because they have already accepted it as true in mind. A worker labors so that one day they may rest. A leader rests in knowing. And from that knowing, right action flows effortlessly. A worker keeps asking, "What should I do next?" A leader keeps asking, "Who must I become next?" Because the leader understands that the outer world does not change until the inner identity changes. Workers improve skills. Leaders transform consciousness. A worker mindset is taught. A leader mindset is chosen. The leader's power comes from consciousness, not position or labor. True authority is not handed down by titles, job descriptions, or organizational charts. It is emitted from the inner state of being, from the conviction one carries, from the unquestioned belief in one's own dominion. A leader may or may not have a crown, but they always have a consciousness of rulership. A worker may be surrounded by instructions, rules, and supervisors, but still feel powerless because power does not come from what surrounds you. It comes from what flows through you. The difference is not outer status, but inner stance. A leader governs life from the inside out. A worker tries to manage life from the outside in. Many people spend years trying to change conditions, while leaving their mindset untouched. They try to rearrange the visible world while ignoring the invisible world that creates it. They work harder, longer, faster, yet feel stuck, overlooked, or limited, because they are operating from the wrong source of power. Labor, in itself, is not power. Position in itself is not power. Even knowledge, without consciousness, is not power. Power begins when one claims identity, when one knows that they do not need to earn control over life, but embody it. The worker thinks life responds to effort. The leader knows life responds to consciousness. A leader understands that the highest form of work is not physical, but mental and spiritual alignment. They do not chase opportunities in fear of missing them. They magnetize opportunities by becoming a vibrational match to what they seek. The worker is trained to believe that output equals reward. The leader understands that being creates reward, and output is only the physical echo of inner truth. The worker feels anxious without constant activity. The leader can sit still and know that what is theirs is already moving toward them. The leader's confidence does not come from what they have achieved, but from the unshakable awareness of what they are destined to achieve. A person can have a boss and still be a leader. A person can have employees and still think like a worker. Leadership is not a role, it is a frequency. It is the silent authority that comes from someone who sees life as malleable, not fixed. A worker asks, what are the rules? A leader asks, what are the possibilities? A worker obeys the law of averages. A leader obeys the law of assumption. The moment a leader assumes a result is already real, the universe begins rearranging itself to deliver it. That is consciousness in command. The leader does not wait for outer permission to act boldly. They move as if the path is already cleared, and in doing so, the path clears. The worker needs proof before believing. The leader believes and then proof appears. The worker seeks reassurance. The leader is reassurance. A leader's certainty influences the room without a word spoken. It is not dominance, arrogance, or force. It is alignment, clarity, and the calm of someone who knows the outcome before the beginning. A worker gives their power to circumstances. The leader gives instructions to circumstances. The worker believes the economy, the supervisor, the weather, or the environment dictates their life. The leader believes their state of consciousness dictates the environment. The worker thinks in reaction. If this happens, then I will do that. The leader thinks in declaration. This is what will happen because I have decided it. A worker negotiates with reality. A leader commands reality. It is possible to clock in every day and still live like a leader. It is possible to own a company and still think like a worker. The dividing line is not wealth or responsibility. It is self-concept. A leader does not wait to be successful to think successfully. They think successfully first, and success becomes inevitable. A worker looks for signs. A leader sends signs. A worker asks the world, will you choose me? A leader tells the world, I am already chosen. Labor is limited by time and physical strength. Consciousness is unlimited. A worker who depends on labor is always calculating. How long will this take? How many hours will I need? How much energy will I have left? A leader who depends on consciousness is unlimited by time, because they understand that things can shift instantly when the inner state is aligned. What others achieve through strain, a leader achieves through certainty. What others call luck, a leader calls alignment. What others spend years pursuing, a leader attracts in perfect timing, because consciousness collapses delay. The worker is attached to methods. The leader is attached to outcomes. A worker says, it must happen this way. A leader says, it will happen, and the way will reveal itself. The worker is a servant of logic. The leader is a master of faith. Logic can only repeat the past. Faith creates the future. The worker worries about how. The leader decides the what, and the how begins to unfold. That is the power of consciousness over labor. A leader never asks, "Do I deserve this?" They understand that deserving is not measured by hours worked, levels completed, or approval received. Deserving is based on identity. You do not earn what you are. You manifest what you are. The universe does not pay you for labor. It mirrors your consciousness. A leader knows this and guards their inner state more carefully than any bank account or business strategy. They speak as if, think as if, live as if, long before results appear. They know that results must appear because consciousness is cause and the world is only effect. The worker is trained to look outside for instruction. The leader listens within. The worker is motivated by fear of loss. The leader is fueled by certainty of gain. The worker questions their authority. The leader questions nothing except their own doubt. The worker lives in effort. The leader lives in command. And the great secret is this: anyone can make the shift. Not by working harder, but by thinking higher. To rise from worker to leader, one must think in faith, not in fear. Fear is the language of limitation, while faith is the language of creation. A worker mindset is built on fear. Fear of losing a job, fear of not having enough, fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, fear of stepping out of line. The worker obeys fear as if it is wisdom, but fear is only imagination used in the wrong direction. A leader, however, uses imagination in faith. They see what is not yet visible and walk toward it as if it already exists. The leader's source of power is not the present, but the unseen certainty of what is coming. Faith is the ability to act from the end, as if the destination has already been reached. A worker asks, "What if it doesn't work?" A leader asks, "What if it already has?" The worker looks at circumstances and shrinks. The leader looks at circumstances and declares, "This is temporary." The worker fears change because they depend on what is. The leader commands change because they depend on what will be. The worker tries to protect what they have. The leader expands what they are. Fear preserves. Faith multiplies. Fear thinks in terms of loss, scarcity, delay, and risk. Faith thinks in terms of supply, timing, inevitability, and purpose. A worker will not move unless they are certain of safety. A leader moves because they are certain of destiny. Fear makes people wait. Faith makes people act. Fear considers the past. Faith considers the promise. Fear analyzes the problem. Faith obeys the vision. A worker must see before believing. A leader believes, and then they see. To rise from worker to leader, you must shift the mind from survival to sovereignty. The worker is always calculating. What if I fail? What if I disappoint someone? What if I lose everything? But the leader asks a different question. What if I am guided? What if I am supported? What if nothing can stop what I am becoming? The worker lives by probability. The leader lives by inevitability. Fear counts obstacles, faith counts outcomes. Fear says, "Look at the facts." Faith says, "Facts will change when I change state." A worker mindset needs guarantees. A leader mindset eyes the guarantee. The one who thinks in fear waits for confidence before acting. The one who thinks in faith acts, and confidence arrives as a result. The worker is trapped until they are sure. The leader is sure because they refuse to be trapped. This is the alchemy of thought that separates leaders from followers. Not luck, not lineage, not background, but the courage to think from the invisible instead of the visible. Fear will always offer logic, but logic is only useful for repeating known results. Faith is required to create new results. The worker asks, "How will this happen?" The leader says, "It will happen because it already belongs to me." The how becomes clear once the mind stops doubting. The worker studies strategies. The leader studies mindset. The worker copies what others are doing. The leader listens to inner instruction. Fear forces imitation. Faith births originality. The rise from worker to leader is not a change in schedule, salary, or surroundings. It is a change in identity. A worker identifies with effort, obligation, necessity. A leader identifies with power, purpose, and calling. The worker thinks, "I must earn everything I receive." The leader thinks, "I receive according to what I believe." The worker tries to deserve. The leader decides to allow. The worker thinks everything is uncertain. The leader thinks nothing can be denied to the one who is aligned. Every time you choose fear, you strengthen the world of effects. Every time you choose faith, you strengthen the world of cause. The worker lives reacting to the world they see. The leader lives creating the world they will see. This is why the worker feels small and the leader feels inevitable. The worker depends on the outer world for direction. The leader gives direction to the outer world through inner decree. The worker tries to protect the present. The leader is loyal to the future. The worker believes in what is visible. The leader believes in what is promised. The worker needs a plan. The leader needs a decision. Decision is the beginning of manifestation, not detail, not permission, not reassurance. A worker waits for instructions. A leader instructs life. The shift happens the moment one says, I do not follow conditions anymore. I create them. A fear makes you negotiate with your own power. Faith makes you claim it. Fear says, don't risk it. Faith says, it is already mine. Fear makes you wait for proof. Faith makes you step into proof. Fear waits for the door to open. Faith walks through the wall. The worker sees limits as facts. The leader sees limits as illusions. The world will always confirm the truth of whatever state you live in. The worker sees lack because they expect lack. The leader sees supply because they expect supply. The great secret is that fear and faith both use imagination. One imagines the worst, the other imagines the best. One creates chains, the other creates pathways. To rise into leadership consciousness, you must ask, which world am I feeding with thought? Every belief is a command to the universe. Every assumption is a blueprint. Every inner picture is a prophecy. The worker worries about what could go wrong. The leader rehearses what will go right. Leadership begins when fear is no longer the final authority. When doubt is no longer consulted. When the past is no longer the reference point. When evidence is no longer required. When inner conviction becomes louder than outer noise. When you choose to think from the end instead of the beginning. When you think in faith, life obeys. When you think in fear, life resists. The mind is the throne. Whoever rules the mind rules the world.